Hey folks, Major Bacon here. Thought we'd take a quick walk through some of the monitoring configuration settings that are available in SharePoint 2013, because I don't know about you, but at times I've been a little mystified. And if you are taking the 70-331 exam, you're going to want to nail these. You need to know exactly where everything is and why you're going to choose one option versus another. So let's take a look at monitoring. In monitoring, there's several different locations you can go, and really I find it works best if you can think of it in terms of what am I going to do to resolve a certain problem. I'm trying to answer questions, right? So let's start with the configuration of trace logs, event logs. I'm just trying to get the logging information. You know, whenever you go to a forum, they're like, okay, give me a dump of your logs. Let me see what's going on. So we're going to configure diagnostic logging under reporting to do that. That's going to allow you to define event throttling, which is what events should be logged in a particular category. So you can see here we've got the event level and trace level set to none for all of these. And we're able to select these by the particular service that is being provided. So of course SharePoint Foundation is a huge one, looking at core services and again all the different events, things that could go wrong, right, in each of these different areas. Now to set it across the board, you can simply select all categories rather than selecting a particular individual category. And then you can define what is the level of reporting you would like. So you can indicate the minimum or maximum level. Again, these are going up in terms of the amount of information that will be logged to the Windows event log. Only the critical, or the critical and the error, critical error and warning, critical error warning and information, or even verbose messages. So verbose you really only want to turn on in a non-production environment. It can really it can give you a hit. Then the least critical event, we can select that. Same idea. Unexpected is the least amount of monitoring you can do other than none. Then a little more with monitorable events, high level events, even medium level events where you're not actually having things crash entirely, just things a little bit off, and then verbose. There's also something called verbose EX, which is only enabled using the PowerShell commandlets. So let's say I set this for high level. That's about that's kind of standard for most production servers. Enable event flood protection. That means essentially in the event log, not the trace log, but the event log, it will hide repeating events. It'll suppress them because they keep happening over and over again. The default path for the log is the local directory, right? It's where it's a Microsoft shared directory with web extensions right here with the SharePoint content. So it's great to put that on a separate drive, but remember each server has to have a common path that they're going to use for this, because this is managed in central administration, defined for all of our servers. Then we have how long will we store log files before they are going to be purged, and are we restricting the trace log usage? So essentially making it circular, out with the old, in with the new, once we've reached a maximum capacity, so that you don't eat your whole hard drive. And that's a good thing to set up. Alright, so that's where we go to manage event throttling, event flood detection. Where's the trace log configured? These are the same thing, by the way, as the ULS logs, okay, Unified Logging Service. That's what we're looking at in those trace logs. All right. Now, in addition to event logging and trace logging, we also have configure usage and health data collection. Now, this is off by default, and you'll have to turn this on if you want it. This is what enables analytics, right? Which pages are getting used the most? Which elements are being brought out? This is required if we want to be able to gather search statistics. We have to gather usage collection information. Then additionally, we can specify the specific events to grab. So looking at analytics usage, application monitoring, I've got bandwidth, file I/O, and analytics. Again, none of these are enabled by default, and you'll notice there's no select all. That can really burden your server if you enable it to start trying to log all this information. The interesting thing about the health and usage information that it will gather is that, again, we have a log file location. Once again, choose carefully. Notice this is the same directory referenced explicitly to the C drive in this case, and that can be relocated. Make sure it's a path that's common to all your servers once again. Logging schedule is, again, what process is it going to go through and gather health data. Okay, so again, how are the resources doing? And the logging that it does from the information up here and the health logging is gathered according to the health logging schedule. And so if we come down here, we can see, oh look, here we have the health analysis jobs there. So those jobs could be configured. We can launch them manually if we need to. These provides the links to those schedules. So here we have the import and processing schedule relative to the database. So what does that mean? It means that health information is put in a log. That log is not directly processed for the use of users. Instead, it is going to be imported into a database. And notice, we have the place to specify the logging database server and authentication. It's actually grayed out because to reconfigure that, we'll have to once again use PowerShell to override the default locations here. But essentially, it's going to be a process of write the information to the log, pull the information from the log into the database server, and then there's that third job, which is to actually configure usage data processing, essentially turn it into a palatable form that can be human read. So those jobs all have to be enabled and functioning in order to get what you need out of this. Once you've configured that, then you're going to be able to do things like view health reports. Now the question you're thinking about with why would I open view health reports? What's my slowest page? All right, that's what this is really all about. What pages are getting hit and what is their response time? So again, you'll be able to select a server and an application and then go and it will execute that. Now if I execute, it's going to give me an error message simply because I don't have any data in there yet. I just configured that for a brand new farm here. So that's why that's showing up that way. Likewise, remember all these individual check marks here? Well, those are going to generate administrative reports. So you can view what you've said you wanted to collect under administrative reports here. Again, once it's had a chance to gather that information, then it can report back to you here. Now, do not confuse health reports, right? Slowest page, top pages, or top users, with health analysis. Health analysis is all about errors, right? Configuration errors, like why are you setting this up this way? And notice there's three core concerns: configuration, performance, and security, and a bunch of rules that are there to essentially warn you if something is going against what should be set up. So for example, here's a simple one. The paging file size should exceed the amount of RAM in the system. It's looking at the system properties and seeing if that's the case. And so it checks that once a week just to make sure that hasn't been changed. It does not have the ability to repair this automatically, but if it finds that your paging file is not set up according to this standard, then it will error out. I can run this right now and it can validate whether or not that is still the case. So again, it just checked, and again, I am still good to go. Now, if we go back here, these are the list of all the things that SharePoint is configured with the potential to warn you about, right? So it can warn you about outbound email not being configured. There's not one there to warn you about inbound email because that's not as much of a concern. That's wouldn't be considered a configuration warning or error. So if I want to see what the configurations are for rule definitions or disable rules that are annoying me for some reason, this is where I would go, right? Because I could edit those rules once I've opened them up if I need to change the schedule or disable them. The other thing that I can do, of course, if we go back to monitoring, is I can review the problems and solutions defined by those rules. So this is where it actually tells me things like, oh, you haven't configured your outbound email. And so it tells me about that error, what type of error it is, gives me the details, and a suggested remedy. In this case, even giving me the stsadm command that will configure the outbound email. By the way, I found that in many cases the more information Go Microsoft links are out of date. Bummer. I'm afraid Microsoft did not keep those up to date when they brought forward a lot of the information from server SharePoint 2010 into SharePoint 2013. All right, last but not least, gang, timer jobs are in here, and those are the automated tasks. So you can get a list of the status of jobs. We can jump to the overall status, what jobs are scheduled, and again we have filters here, so we can view all jobs or those of a particular server, service, application, right? And so all the jobs that are associated with a particular definition here. Is there anything running? Again, we can go to all. Okay, currently I have no running jobs of any kind. Don't forget that filter or you'll miss stuff. And then history. This is especially important to see if you have any jobs that have not succeeded. We can go back and track that down and see when did it last execute and attempt a successful job. All right, gang, that is what you're going to find here in the monitoring section of the SharePoint Central Administration site.